Aloha and welcome to Experience 47. This is the digits test WAD, and this is a WAD where prior to doing it I really want you to have looked at the code and the screencast associated with both the play example fluent lineum and the play example form systems. The better you understand these, the more familiar you are with these, the easier this WAD is going to be for you. If you don't quite understand these, then just go through this WAD anyway. Maybe after you've done through this WAD once, you go back to this and you'll understand them a little bit better. Okay. Second thing is the digits CRUD practice WAD needs to be merged back in. So again, if you go to GitHub, you should be seeing this kind of pattern where we do the WADs and we merge them back into master. And then finally, I'm going to let you kind of choose between HTML unit or phantomjs as your browser simulator. For this WAD, I'm going to just use HTML unit, which means I'm not going to be clicking on the nav bar links to go back and forth between pages. That means I'm not testing certain things, but then again, it means I don't have to install phantomjs. Installing phantomjs is not a big deal. It takes maybe 5 minutes, so it's not a big deal to do it. And in fact, in other WADs, I'm going to use phantomjs just so you can see both. But for this one, just to tell you, I'm going to use HTML unit so you can see how that would work. Okay. Goal of this WAD: get comfortable with basic techniques for writing integration tests. So we're just going to do a couple. One called retrieve index page. One called create new contact. Lots of other things that you really should be testing for if you were doing kind of comprehensive tests, but that's not what I want to try to test for in this WAD, is your ability to come up with a comprehensive test suite. We're just going to play around with writing a couple tests, and in fact, once you feel comfortable with these, you can kind of write all sorts of tests. Write as many tests as your heart desires. Okay. So, well, not necessarily. Maybe more tests than your heart desires, right? I mean, people's heart really generally don't desire writing tests. At least my heart doesn't really desire to write tests. But I do it anyway because I know it's a good thing. And later on, when I'm trying to see if I've made a change that breaks the code, I sure as heck like being able to run the tests. And when some new developer comes in and they can run the tests and see how various things work, they're very happy too. So tests are, again, a really good thing to have in your system. Hopefully what will come out of this is the sense that writing tests is just not that hard. So we might as well go ahead and write a few, okay? Okay, all that to be said, let's actually maybe do the WAD, which means we have to start the timer. And then we're going to create a branch called test1. So we do it this way, test-1. Okay, and then we're supposed to perform QA, so we'll do propeller shift I check style and run that. No suspicious code found. Let's go down here and run the test. We could run them from, of course, inside IntelliJ. I'm just going to run them from the activator. Doesn't really make any difference. It seems to take about the same amount of time. And again, as I keep saying, it's always good to do this stuff at the beginning of a WAD to make sure you're starting with a system that's right. Otherwise, you make a change, that things break. You don't know whether it was something you just did or something that was already there a long time ago. Okay, so everything passes. Okay, now the next thing is, if your test package is named test rather than test, refactor to be called tests. This is repairing bogosity from my prior WADs where I called this thing package test. That's crazy. It should be called tests because in the remainder, following the style of the original, which is one of our elements of Java style, everything else is pluralized, so we should pluralize this as well. And that's pretty easy to do. You can, oops, sorry, I've hit the wrong one, Shift F6, okay, or rename in the refactor menu, brings up this thing, which is a warning, and it's like, oh, full speed ahead, don't worry about that. Call it tests, click refactor, and kaboom, our package is now called test, which is right. Okay. Next thing, which is kind of crazy, is we're just going to get rid of this entirely, because in fact we're not doing these kind of unit level tests where we're internally rendering templates. So let's just get rid of that, because the kind of the style that I'm going to have you use in this class is to just do integration tests, because you get a lot of coverage over your code with a relatively small amount of tests. As you get into bigger and bigger systems, you might want to have unit tests. But again, I'm just trying to, help you get started. I think this is a good way to kind of wade into the idea of doing testing as a regular part of your development. Okay, so we're going to create a method called test retrieve index page in the integration test class. Okay, which is, right here. Okay. And it should just test to see that the index page can be retrieved. Use the page object pattern, i.e. create a package called test.pages and a class called index page. You'll find play example fluent Lenium to be helpful. Okay, so here I am down here. I've actually retrieved play example fluent Lenium already. Okay, and I'm going to show you something that is going to, it might even blow your mind. I don't know, but we need something very similar to this pages directory from play example fluent Lenium in our digits. So what the heck? Let's do a propeller C to copy the pages directory. Let's go up to tests. Let's do a propeller V for paste. Okay, we'll click OK. Okay, and we'll add those files to Git, and it's all of a sudden, kaboom! Now we've got our pages subpackage inside the test class in our digits application with an index page, and pretty nice, yeah? Nice feature of IntelliJ. Okay, now this index page does not have a form on it. Our digits index page, and it might be a good time to actually, what the heck? Well, actually, yeah, activator run. Okay, so here's our actual application here, and if we go to the home page, okay. So it turns out on our index page or our home page, there is no form, so we shouldn't be having this method here. So let's delete that one. Get rid of some of these new lines. Okay, and now, but we want to create a method called test retrieve index page, and we need to have this page object pattern. Well, now we've got the page object pattern. We've got an index page. The URL for the index page is just the top level URL. But we have this isApp method, and we need to make sure this isApp method is correct. This is the method which every page extending this fluent page pattern has to implement, and it's your test to make sure you are where you think you are. Okay, and a simple way to do that is to assert that the title is equal to a string if indeed your application is designed such that every page has a unique title string. And in fact, that's the way we did it for the digits application. You can see that this is the home page for digits. You go to new contact, it has a separate string here with the digits application. So we can we can use this title is equal to as a nice way of checking to make sure that we're at the page that we want. So we can say home digits, okay, and that's our isApp method for our index page. Okay, so we've got our index page kind of design pattern. Now we want to, in the integration test class, we want to check to make sure that we're where we want to be. Okay, so the first thing is we've got to change this method name called test retrieve index page. Okay, and then if we go back down to play example fluent Lenium, which has lots of kind of very interesting sample code for us, what we can see is that here's some code that basically does exactly what we need to do in order to get to the index page. So let's paste it in. And so when we copy and paste, IntelliJ very helpfully says, by the way, we need to import a package in order to paste those pages. So heck, let's import it. Okay. And what we have now is we have this method test retrieve index page. And we can see here that it almost works. What doesn't work is that we have this port value, which should be 3333. Okay? And what if we look back down here, what we can see is because the port needs to be passed in and then further passed on to the page, what we do is we define it as a static, kind of a constant outside the class, and then pass it in wherever we need it. And that's a good, when you're using the page object pattern, that's actually the way you want to do things. So let's just copy that code. Okay, and then we'll change this to port. All right, and now now things actually look good. It all compiles. There's no problems. Okay, so so the only other thing I think we need to do here in order to make our test work is that we've made an index page, we've gone to it, but we don't actually figure out whether we're actually there. Okay, and the way we can do that is just say index page dot is at. Okay? Okay, and with that, I think our test should actually work. So let's run activator test and see what happens. Okay, so the test passed. That's a great thing. But I don't know about you, but it's like I'm not completely confident. I mean, maybe this test would pass no matter what. And so one thing you can do to kind of check, sanity check things is to say, well, what if I change this to something that is clearly bogus? Okay, is my test going to now fail? This is just a way of establishing confidence that this crazy test framework scheme that I'm claiming actually does testing will actually test correctly. So let's run it with this and see what happens. Okay, this time the test fails, and it fails with this message, expected home 2 digits, but was home digits. That's really awesome because that both indicates that our logic is actually doing what we want it to, and also indicates that in fact, wow, we were at the home page, okay, where we want it to be. All right, so that's a good way of kind of I think helping you believe in what you're actually doing here. All right, and it also incidentally means that we finished with this one, test retrieve index page. So the next thing we need to do is create new contact in the integration test class. And the idea of this method is that if we go to integration, okay, that we're going to create a new method. And in this called test, create new contact. And instead of just going to the index page, we're going to go to the new contact page, create a contact, and then see that it's present in the home page. Okay, well, we need because we're using the page object pattern for our testing, we need to create a new contact page to encapsulate the behavior associated with the other page, right? So now we've got a index page, sorry. Now we've got a index page class, which is going to encapsulate all the behavior associated with this page. We now need a new class called new contact page, which is supposed to encapsulate all the behavior associated with this page. And this page actually has a behavior, which is that you can have forms and you want to fill them out. Okay, so let's go back to index page, okay, and I'm going to show you another really awesome IntelliJ feature, which is F5, or copy. This is actually the clone class method. So if we say new contact page, and we want it in the exact same place as the index page, and we click OK, and we click OK, all of a sudden we've got a new class, all right, which differs in, it's changed the constructor, it's changed the class name, everything else remains the same, and that was really easy. Now we've got our second page. Okay, so the first thing you have to do when you create a new page in the page object pattern is check your this.url and make sure that it's correct. Okay, well, in our case, if we're at the new contact page, what we can see is that we have this new contact, which is the URL for this page. And so what we're going to have to do is update this with new contact. Okay? And that's going to make sure that when we actually want to go, when we do this get URL, and we go to the page, that we'll actually get to where we want to be. Okay? And then the second thing, we look at this is at, and we say, what is that supposed to look like? And it's supposed to look like, instead of home digits, new contact digits. Okay? So that's pretty nice. So that's so far what we need. And then the other thing, though, that we need for the behavior associated with this new contact page is the behavior of being able to actually create a contact. Okay? So the way we want to do that is write a new method called public void. Let's call it create contact. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to pass into this method the contents of the contact that we want to create. So we're going to say string first name, string last name, and string telephone. Okay? And then the way you do this, so we're gonna basically fill out this form and submit it. Okay? So the Fluent Lenium style for that is we're going to say fill, and then we're going to give the ID of the field that we want to be filling, and then we want to say what do we want to put in that field, and of course, in this case, what we want to put in there is the first name. Okay? And then let's propeller D to make a copy of this, because then we want to say fill last name, and then a propeller D to say fill telephone with telephone. Okay, and then the question is, how do you actually submit this? Okay, and it might be helpful just to go to our in our Fluent Lenium, you go to the index page, and you can see that the way you actually, here's an examples of filling a field, and then the way you actually do it is you say submit, submit. Okay, so you call the submit Fluent Lenium method with the ID of the button or the whatever it is that you want to submit. Okay, so now here's a good time, okay, to again do some sanity checking. So we want to make sure that all of these IDs exist in the page that we're actually testing. So how can we do that? Well, one way we can do that is we can click on the field, and we can say inspect element. Maybe I'll make this a little bigger so we can see things. And that takes us directly to this input field where you in fact see ID equals first name. Awesome. Okay, so let's click the magnifying glass, go to our next field, ID equals last name. Awesome. Okay, let's scroll down, go to this field, and as you might expect, ID equals telephone. Okay, awesome once again. Last time, click the button, we see button. Okay, so look at this. Our button field does not have an ID associated with it, so this is not going to work. Okay, what we need is an ID equals submit associated with the button. Well, that's super easy. Let's just go back to newcontact.scala.html. Here's our button source code. We're going to say ID equals submit. Save it out. Go here. Refresh the page. Okay, let's see. So we see things redoing. Okay, and now look at that button ID equals submit. Okay, so we've updated the page. Chrome Developer Tools updated itself. We have the ID field that we want, and here we can go back to where we were. Okay, so now this create contact field, if all goes according to plan, should actually fill out the form with first name, last name, telephone, and then submit it. Okay, that's good. Okay, so how do we know whether it's been submitted? Well, the idea is that on the index page, we should be able to verify that the new contact appears there. Okay, well, how do we do that? So let's go back to the index page, and what we can do is we can write a method. Public void, and what should we call this? Why don't we call this has contact, and we'll say string first name, string last name, string telephone. Okay. Now, how do we find out that this contact actually exists? Okay, so if we actually do it, pj foo 808 333 3333, and click add. Okay, and then we go back to the home page. We see that it exists there. So it would be super sweet if we could actually see that there was actually the first row of the table contained the data that we want. And actually, I think in Fluent Lenium there are ways to inspect tables and do what you want. But we're gonna, for the purposes of right now, we're gonna go with something much simpler. We're just gonna say assert that, and then we'll call page source, and we'll say we want to assert that the page source contains first name. So somewhere on that page should be first name. And then somewhere on that page should be last name, and then somewhere on that page should be telephone. Okay, so not exactly the most awesome test that we could ever possibly write for this, but to a first order of magnitude, it's going to actually tell us whether or not our submit form worked correctly, because if this thing, if we can't find those things on the page, then we definitely know something's wrong. Okay, so now we've got our behaviors in our pages. Now we can finally write this test, which is called test create new contact. And so the way we can do that is we can propeller C, and then propeller V, and then we're going to call this test create new contact. And I'm noticing that my Java doc explanations are terrible, so let's just fix that. Check to see that the index page can be retrieved. Check to see that we can create and display a new contact. Okay, so what's going to happen here? Well, let's start off. We got this index page. What the heck? Let's just make us a contact page. New contact. There's probably a IntelliJ way to do this easier, but I don't know. Okay, and then it says new contact. Whoa, mess up. Okay, so option return, we'll do the import. Okay, so we've got an index page, we've got a contact page. Okay, we want to create a new contact, so we're just going to basically directly go to contact page, and then we'll check to make sure that we're there. Okay, because that'll fail right away, and then we'll know if something else has gone wrong. Okay, and then the next thing we want to do is we want to say contact page create contact. Okay, so type return. Now what are we going to put in there? Well, we got to put in these three strings, but because we're going to be right after checking to see that those strings exist on our index page, we should make some variables. So let's say string first name equals Philip, string last name equals Johnson, gotta capitalize it, and then string telephone equals 808, and we should probably have a valid one, right? That would be because that's a whole other set of tests, right? Is to test that if we give it an invalid telephone number, the right thing happens, and that's I'm going to leave that as an exercise to the reader, right? That you should be able to write a test that when you enter an illegal telephone number, you get an error. Okay, so think about that one. That that would be a great little WAD test, right? Huh, what do you know? I wonder if I'll do that. That's a good question. Okay, so anyway, where am I? Okay, so now we can say first name, last name, telephone. Okay, so that has created our contact. So now what we can say is browser.go to index page. Okay, again, it would be nice if we were using phantomjs, we could actually click the link in the nav bar to get back over to the home page. But because we're using HTML unit doesn't work good with JavaScript. We're not doing it that way. We're not invoking, we're not clicking a link to get to navigate. We're actually just retrieving the pages directly, which, not optimal, but you're still getting some, behavioral testing in. Okay, browser.go to index page, and then we want to say index page dot has contact, first name, last name, telephone. Okay? All right, and that should be enough to check this. Okay? So let's go back to our thing. We'll say activator test. And let's find out if we pull this off. Okay, great. Our test passed. So now we're going to make sure our system still passes QA. Well, we just passed the test, so we know that's for sure. Let's try check style. And this is where check style comes in handy, because we are flying along so fast that we forgot a few things. So let's go back to index page. And if we look at import, we see that there's some things. Now, what I would do here is do our optimize imports, just to do anything else that's needed. So that's, and then we're missing a JavaDoc comment. So let's make one of those. Checks that contact exists in page, the first name, the last name, the telephone. Okay, and then integration test, we've got some unused, so let's do optimize import to get rid of them, and that's all that's in there. And then a new contact page, boy, I'm not doing good with the Java docs, but fortunately we have check style to help us. So it creates a new contact with specified data, the first name, the last name, and the telephone. Okay, so we'll do a publish if I, run check style again, and no suspicious code found. So we now just got to commit the branch. Where are we? Beep. Changes. So we deleted application test, created some new things, looks really good. So we'll say finished digits test, WAD, commit and sync. And we'll call this 26 minutes. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. I think it's a pretty darn nice WAD. Get your testing groove on. As you get better and better at this, you can just fly through the tests, particularly as you kind of build up, this sample code. And that's what play example fluent Lenny and play example form is trying to provide to you, is a bunch of snippets of code that you can, adapt really quickly to your own needs. And you've got some pretty nice testing in not a lot of time.